Hey, this is Molly Patrick, and you're listening to the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. We are all about helping people eat more plants and celebrating imperfection as we navigate life's messiness. Hey there, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. I am here with Lissa from Raw Food Romance. And Lissa, thanks for joining us. This is a different topic than I have covered in the past. So as you know, we are mainly whole food plant based, and that's where we're coming from. You're coming from a raw angle, and I wanted to have you on just because we do get questions about this in our community. And like I was talking to before we hit record, I'm always open to talking to people who are come at it from a different angle. But there's a lot of overlap as well. So I think that this is going to be a fun conversation. So thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much. This is so much fun. I've been looking forward to this one because like you said, it's nice to merge them because it's not about all or nothing. It's about trying your best every day to include different things into your life. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very much where I come from as well. And, what we were talking about a little bit is, there's a lot of people who are eating a diet that's not a vegan diet or a whole food plant-based diet or a raw diet. They're just eating this kind of the standard diet. And even within the standard diet, there are things that are plant-based that they're eating, and there are things that are raw that they're eating. And they might not look at it from that angle or that lens or use that language, but there's so much overlap in all the different ways of eating. And even in the whole food plant-based world, I was thinking about I live in Hawaii, and we have delicious Jamaican lily koi. So it's a passion fruit. And there's a couple of big passion fruit bushes that I pass by on my morning walk. And the people who live in these houses that have these amazing lily koi bushes, they don't eat their fruit. And so it's always just dropping, and there's so much of them. And so every morning I'm taking some. So I was eating this delicious lily koi this morning, and I was like, I thought of you because I'm like, yeah, this is raw, and I eat it every day. And so, there are things that we do eat raw already. And so I want to just first kind of dive in, and I want to understand, I know that you've been raw for 11 years now. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
And what made you go that direction?
Oh, great question. So I love that. Yeah, I think it's interesting how people will say certain things like, oh, I don't eat raw food. Or they'll see a raw recipe and they won't make it because they're not raw. They're like, well, I'm not a raw vegan, so I'm not going to make it. And I'm like, well, but raw food is for everybody. You like guacamole, that's raw. Salsa, most salsas are raw if you make a pico. So there's a lot of raw stuff already out there. So I like that you mentioned that, and that those passion fruits sound so good.
It's so good.
Yeah, so I started my journey when I was roughly around 24. So in 2004, I discovered raw food. I really resonated. I was like, this makes so much sense to me because you're eating living foods exactly the way nature provided them, right? Of course, we pick them and we chop them up and play with them. But ultimately, raw is, the main way that I want to eat my foods. So in 2004, I started kind of playing around with it. And for the next decade, I would do different diets. I did all kinds of stuff. I was never vegan or fully plant-based, but I did some paleo stuff. And I would always come back to raw. And I tried it 100 times or more. And I just was never able to get to it because I was always eating really high fat. And I was limiting my calories because I was stuck in diet culture where I had to eat less to weigh less and all that kind of stuff. So I was eating huge amount of fats, not very many calories. And then I'd run into cravings and I'd feel tired. And of course I felt better than I did when I was eating animal products and ultra processed foods, of course. Right. But I wasn't getting that that magic spark that I was expecting from raw during those 10 years. And then, I last anywhere from 3 days. I think the longest I went was about 2 months. And then, I started eating cooked food and animal products again because I wasn't vegan. Then in 2014, I had experienced about a year of a lot of really intense symptoms. I've always had gut problems ever since I was a teen. I had cystic acne ever since I was a teen, horrible cysts underneath my skin. I had hormonal imbalance and joint pain and like I was mentioning with the gut problems, I was diagnosed with candida overgrowth when I was 19. So I did a lot of cleanse kits and fasts and herbal stuff and all kinds of things because I worked in the natural health industry. So I was a nutritional consultant and I was selling supplements and all that kind of stuff. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff and I took a lot of herbs and everything, and nothing really got to it, like the way I really wanted it to. So in 2014, I woke up one night and I had heart flutters in the middle of the night because I was having those multiple times, maybe like 4 to sometimes 7 times a week. And it was scary because I would wake up and I'd be like, what if I was actually having a heart attack? What would, like, is that what it feels like? And then I wouldn't be able to get back to sleep because I'd be all anxious. So that morning, it was September 12th of 2014. I was like, I'm going to go raw again. And my partner at the time just rolled his eyes. He was like, okay, like you're doing this again. But this time I watched Forks Over Knives, Cowspiracy, and Earthlings all in one day. And I was
that's a heavy day.
Yes, it was a heavy day. And what really resonated most with me was the female exploitation that we do for dairy and eggs. And it never clicked in my head that that's what was happening. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Not just the meat, but the dairy and all that stuff. And so then I was vegan, and I'm like, well, I had no idea, like whole food, plant-based, whatever. I watched Forks Over Knives, but I immediately defaulted to raw because I was like, well, that makes the most sense. So let's do it. And it stuck because I immediately learned about low fat. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try low fat and I'm going to try eating enough. And when I started eating a huge variety of foods and I was eating abundantly, I didn't have any cravings. I had tons of energy and I was like, this is actually working. And then 11 and a half years later, here I am chatting with you.
Okay, so I love that. Wow, I love hearing about people sort of like whys, like how and why and like how did this stick? Because I think for a lot of people, they will try different ways of eating and it doesn't stick for whatever reason. But when I hear people talk about like specifically for like a plant-based diet or a vegan diet, whatever you want to call it, where you're avoiding animals, like 10 out of 10 times when I hear people say, hey, I watched this documentary and I had no idea the exploitation of animals that I was contributing to, and I couldn't be part of that. For so many people, that's what makes it actually stick. Because then it's become something like bigger, much, much bigger. And so thank you for sharing that and for bringing that up. And I think, I've never eaten meat in my life just because that was how I was raised. And I just never wanted to. It didn't ever feel like right for me. But it's like such a, like, I'm so sensitive and I'm so sensitive to animals and I love them so much. And I think for anybody who's like, really wanting to eat plant-based but can't make it stick, like have a documentary day like you had, and I promise like something shifts, something happens. So thank you for bringing it up. Yeah,
you're welcome.
And also just doing it, like focusing on, okay, how can I do this in a way that's really healthy, right? Because you mentioned before, like, oh, I was eating not enough and I was eating really a lot of like fat, and so it wasn't like, even though what you were eating was like technically healthy, there's still like a way to do it that's going to support us. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, I tried vegan diets, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't have any energy. And I'm thinking, well, okay, what, I would love to see like a food journal or like what were you eating? What, because there is a way to do this where you do feel incredible. So it's awesome that you were able to experience that and just kind of go from there. So, I want to talk about sort of your, like, what you eat in a day type of, like, tell me a typical kind of breakfast, lunch, and dinner for you. And I'm assuming there are raw restaurants, just like there are plant-based restaurants. I'm assuming you cook most of your own food because those restaurants are limited and usually pretty expensive from my experience. So what does a day of food look like for you?
Yeah. That restaurant comment is so true because it's just, there's just nothing. And we live in Las Vegas, and there used to be
Ugh.
two places where we could get raw food here, and both of them have closed. And it's just like, and all the vegan places are like vegan comfort food, fast food. And you're like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so Nate and I always say like our favorite restaurant is our kitchen, and that's where we make pretty much all our food. So for a day in my life, I roughly eat around 2,400 calories a day. So that's kind of my average. And we walk every single day. So what we do is we do two breakfasts. We're like the hobbits. We do second breakfast. So we'll wake up in the morning and we'll have water and some whole fruit. So we'll eat maybe like anywhere from 200 to 400 calories of whole fruit, usually just bananas, mangoes, grapes, whatever. But we'll eat that for energy for our workout. And then we go for our workout or walk. We'll walk with weighted vests. And then sometimes we'll come back and do like a weight training thing. It's not often, but sometimes we'll do that. Then we have our big smoothie. And our smoothie usually is, and I have my empty one right here. It's a 32 ounce, and it's usually roughly around 600 to 800 calories worth of just plain fruit. Sometimes we'll add greens, but we eat a lot of greens throughout the rest of the day. So usually our breakfasts are mostly all fruit. So by lunch, I've already consumed about 1,000 calories worth of fruit, and I have so much more energy. I feel so much better. I feel hydrated. I feel ready for my day. So,
Hey there, we're going to take a real quick pause and I'm going to ask you this. Are you tired of doing mental gymnastics when it comes to dinner? And would it totally light you up if you had a constant flow of healthy, delicious, plant powered meals without the stress of planning or crossing your fingers that it's going to be yummy? That's exactly why we created our Clean Food Dirty Girl Meal Plan Club. Every week, you follow our done for you plant based meal plans, complete with grocery lists and simple batch cooking instructions. No more guesswork, no more wasted food, no more recipe fails, and no more wondering what's for dinner. All you have to do is follow along, and healthy, delicious dinner is at your fingertips all week long. Our members say it's their secret system for saving time, eating healthier, and finally finding their plant based flow. When you're ready to ditch the mental gymnastics of figuring out dinner, head over to cleanfooddirtygirl.com and click on Meal Plan Club to join the fun. Okay, now back to our awesome episode.
then at lunch, it varies. You know how the day is. You're like, well, some days I like this, some days like that. But on average, most days we have either a raw wrap if we're going hiking or something, because my raw wraps are like game changers. So they're really easy to make. They're really easy to travel with. So we'll have a wrap sometimes, but most of the time we just have a salad. We'll have a really big, giant, what I call a fruiting vegetable salad. So it's a base of lettuce, usually romaine or green leaf or something soft like iceberg. And we'll do all the fruiting vegetables like tomatoes, bell peppers, cucumbers, zucchini. These are all vegetables that are actually fruit, but we call them vegetables because they're more culinary vegetables. So we have a big, like really hydrating salad with a low fat dressing, usually a date based dressing. So we'll do like 5 dates blended with a garlic clove, some lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, some smoked paprika, maybe a little bit of chia seeds in there. And we'll blend that and just use that on our salad. So we eat that for lunch. And then we'll usually snack on fruit. That's our snack of choice. Grapes are a typical snack. Right now, it's sumo orange season here. So we've been loving the sumo oranges. We do those, or mangoes or bananas or whatever, if we feel like we need something. Not always, but we'll snack on fruit. And then dinner is when we have our more grounding meal, which is either a raw food creation like raw lasagna or raw burger or tostadas or something like that. But most of the time it's just another salad because we make it easy for ourselves. We make a really big, really dark leafy green salad. So this is where we have a lot more of our bitters and our dark leafies. So kale, more romaine, we'll have endive, radicchio, dandelion greens. We'll have herbs like parsley and dill in there, more tomatoes, more cucumbers. And it's a big, giant salad. It's huge. And then that's where we have our more fatty dressing. So if we're going to do cashews or almonds or something like that, or avocado, we do our fats in the evening in that salad. And yeah, by the end of the day, we stop eating around, I don't know, like 5:30 to 7. It really depends. But then we try to go to bed, at a decent time. We try to get to bed by 8:30 or 9. So we're up early. But we start eating earlier so that we can get everything in, because with raw food, it's so low in calorie density that you got to eat more of it. A lot of people don't realize how much they need to eat, but it's good because I like to eat. So
Yeah, well, all of that sounds really, really delicious, and you're making me hungry. Yeah, I mean, it's similar. It's actually similar to how I eat. There are definitely a lot of similarities. I call them big ass salads, and it's like a salad it's more like a huge mixing bowl than it is like a regular eating bowl.
family size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
family size. And of course, my salads have like, a lot of beans and baked tofu and like a lot of stuff like that. Can we talk about beans for a minute? Because I'm curious. I know that when I look like at raw recipes, I do find recipes sometimes for like raw hummus or stuff that does have beans. So can you tell us how that works?
Yeah, so I agree with, the whole food plant-based science about how legumes are really important for longevity. So it's like, well, how do we get it into a raw diet? Because I'm always focused on, how can I do it? So we do 4 main types of legume sprouts. We do all kinds of lentils. So there's like so many different varieties of lentils that you can sprout. Chickpeas are amazing. We do mung beans and regular peas. So like adzuki or cow peas or whatever. Green peas work really well too. So what we do is we sprout them, and each one has a different soak time. For example, the chickpeas, we soak for 48 hours straight. So it's like 2 days of soak time because they're such a dense, larger pea. So they need time to absorb that water. And a lot of people will just soak them overnight and then try and sprout them, but they don't really sprout the same way. So if you soak those ones for 48 hours, then they sprout a lot easier, and you only have to sprout them for 24 hours. And then what we do with the lentils and the chickpeas, sometimes the mung beans we just eat fresh. But for the lentils and the chickpeas, what we like to do is once they're sprouted, once they have like a little itty bitty tiny tail, they don't need a long tail at all to be edible raw. That little tiny tail, we'll rinse them really well, and then we'll put them in little 1-cup containers and freeze them. The freezing thaw method actually softens them a lot. So they're not quite as soft as cooked, but they're not as hard and starchy as they are straight raw. So they're kind of like in between, and they're so much more enjoyable, especially the lentils. Like the lentils in a raw soup, if you thaw them from frozen, you can't even tell that they're not cooked. They're like soft and they kind of have not a little crunch, but just enough. But they're so good. So we'll put those in our salads as well. We make a sprouted chickpea salad mash that has like a raw vegan mayo, which we like to make with cashews and mango. And we'll add, the typical stuff like fermented cucumbers or pickles, and we'll do radish and celery and stuff like that in there. And it is so good. We'll put that in our wraps or on our salad sometimes. But the lentils in the soup, or we make raw curries and raw chilies, so we'll add those to them. But the only one that we won't sprout for sure 100% of the time is the red kidney beans. Those are not, you can even get sick from them if you don't cook them properly. So they're kind of one of those like, on the fence ones. You have to really cook them good. But, black beans, we actually make an unpasteurized tempeh. So that does involve cooking the beans first, but then they're fermented. So they're now alive. They're considered a living food. And Nate and I follow a raw and living food diet. So we do have our own ferments, and we do black bean unpasteurized tempeh as well, which is super delicious. We don't do it often enough, but it's so good. So yeah, I believe that they're a really great addition to a raw diet that way.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And I was going to ask about kidney beans because I think it was, yes, I've heard that. And I think that Dr. Greger, I first heard that about, like, you really got to cook those kidney beans. And so can you just talk about that tempeh real quick? So how do you do it? I've never made my own tempeh. I have had a really delicious, there was this couple that used to live here on Maui that made a yellow split pea tempeh, and I've never had a tempeh better than that. It was so good. But they moved, and then they took their company with them, and I can't get it anymore. So how do you make your black bean tempeh? That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So in our Raw Vegan Culinary Techniques ebook that we just released, we have really detailed instructions on how to make it because we talk about fermenting as being a raw vegan culinary technique.
Mm-hmm.
But what you basically do, you need an Instant Pot that has like the yogurt setting. You need to have it at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like 85 to 90 degrees is like the perfect incubation setting for temperature. So what you do is you soak, we'll just use black beans as an example. You can definitely use like the split peas. You can use chickpeas. We had a really good like chickpea yellow lentil tempeh one time. And the cool thing about unpasteurized tempeh is that there isn't that bitterness to it, and it's fluffier. It's so much better than,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the store-bought
The
stuff.
fluffiness. I know what you're
Yeah.
saying, that fluffiness. It's like, if I hadn't have tried that, I would have been like, what are you talking about? But because I've tasted it, I'm like, it is fluffy. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's
Yeah.
so different because all the tempeh that you buy in the store has to be pasteurized for sale for food
Mm-hmm.
safety, which is
Mm-hmm.
totally understandable, right? And it's not like it's bad or anything. People, you know, eat a lot of that. But if you want unpasteurized, where it's like still microbially active, then you got to make it yourself because then it's fresh and raw. And fresh raw tempeh goes bad in like 3 or 4 days. So you have to eat it, you know, fast. So what you do is you soak the beans overnight. And then in the morning, it takes 1 hour from, you know, start to finish, roughly, depending on the time the beans need to cook. So you cook the beans for like 8 minutes at pressure, and then you let them pressure release for like 11 minutes, I think it is. And then once you're there, then you strain them and you put them on a big tray and you allow them to dry so that they're not wet on the surface. And you can like flip them around and stuff like that. After maybe like half an hour or so, then you spray them with an acid, which could be, we use apple cider vinegar. You could use lemon juice, but we find the apple cider vinegar works a little bit better because you need an acidic environment for the spores to, you know, do their thing. So you spray it with a little bit of this acid and then you let it sit until they're tacky to the touch. They're not wet. You don't want the beans to be wet, and you don't want them to be overcooked or mushy because it's just not going to work right. So, but you don't want them to be, you can't use sprouted beans for it either because they're too hard, and they need the yeast or spores need to, it's kind of like a fungus yeast. They need to like get inside, and they can't do it with sprouts or uncooked beans, and it's too much if they're mushy. So you kind of have to have that, like that 3 bears, kind of like the perfect amount, right? So once that acid on the beans has dried, then you sprinkle on the starter, and you can buy starters on Amazon, and a bag will last you a long time. So the starter, we keep our starter sealed, vacuum sealed in the fridge, so it stays fresh. So we just add the starter. I think it's 1 teaspoon per 2 cups of cooked beans, I believe. Okay. But I have like more. My husband usually makes it, so
he's got you.
Yeah, I know. He's got he's got it down. So, but once you put the starter on there, it kind of looks like, you know, you sprinkled like icing sugar on the beans, sort of. That's what it looks like. And then we like the fresh banana leaf way of forming them, but not everybody can get fresh banana leaves because there's something in the banana leaves that it makes the environment friendly for the yeast to grow. And that's actually how they came about tempeh originally, was because they would pack the beans in the banana leaves, and some of those spores that make the tempeh were in the banana leaves. So then they would make tempeh because they would travel like, you know, days or weeks or whatever with it, and then it would mold in there and they would just eat it because they're like, well, yeah, I gotta eat this food. So that's kind of how it came to be. But we'll wrap it. You can't really pack it, you don't want to squish them, so you kind of just pack it into like this little cake, and then we tie it with a little piece of cooking twine, and then we put them in the incubator. If not, you can use Ziploc bags, like the little sandwich bags, and we split our batch into quarters, because we start with 2 cups of beans and it ends up with 4 cups. So each cake is about a cup worth of the beans cooked. And then we put them in those little Ziploc bags and we poke a bunch of holes in them so the airflow. And then we put everything back in the Instapot on the yogurt setting mode at roughly 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 days. So it's a 48-hour process. And after the 48 hours, you get that like beautiful, like cotton candy mesh going on with the beans. And then immediately you transfer them to the fridge, and you've got about 3 to 4 days to eat everything. You can freeze it as well if you want to, if you don't finish it in time, but they're so good. And they take a little bit of practice. Like, you got to make a couple batches and kind of learn how it goes. But yeah, they're really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So questions. Boom, boom. Where do you get banana leaves in Las Vegas?
In Las Vegas. So it was interesting because there's a lot of like Mexican population here. So there was Nate and I mentioned we do like a really long walk in the morning. It's anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. Sometimes if we have time, we'll just walk for like 20,000 steps. But there's a place that we walk to, and about maybe 6 months ago, there was a brand new grocery store that opened up there. And we're like, this is cool. We can walk here, right? Maybe pick some stuff up and take it home. And it's a Mexican grocery store called Superior. And we go in there and we're just looking at all the stuff they had. And they had banana leaves there. It was like $3.99 for like a big, huge bunch. So we bought them, we brought them home, and we cut them into little pieces that we could wrap in, and we froze them. Because, they go bad eventually if you just leave them in the fridge and you're not making tempeh very often. Plus, if you freeze them, just like with the fresh sprouted chickpeas or lentils, if you freeze them and thaw them, they get softer. They're like limp, and they're easier to roll and fold, to make your tempeh cake. So that's where we found them. But I know not everybody is available to find those. But Asian grocery stores, international markets, and like Mexican stores usually will have them if you're lucky enough to have those.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. So, well, on Maui, we have so many banana trees, but like, I'm trying to think, we don't have, I guess if people were going to do that, they could just literally go on the tree and get banana leaves.
Exactly.
And bananas grow, like, it's crazy. I didn't really realize until I had a house that had banana trees in it, but it's crazy how they multiply so quickly. And a banana, it's not even really a tree. It's like a stalk. Right.
Yeah.
And then it'll start populating the little babies before the big one is done. And they're so abundant here. And our bananas are tiny. They're like this big.
Oh,
they're so cute.
So cute. But yeah, you could just totally pick your own leaves. And I would freeze them first, though, unless they're the young leaves where it's like really super pliable. But if you freeze them first and then thaw them, they're a lot softer. And a lot of people that I've seen make tempeh will usually either put like a flame to it, like a lighter flame, to kind of like soften them. But we found the freeze thaw method to be like pretty good. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah, this is very interesting and all very like, yeah. So a bunch of things. I used to spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and one of my favorite restaurants was it was like Indian, like Southern Indian restaurant. It was like a type of restaurant that they had a lot of places there, but it was called Banana Leaf. And so you sit down and they bring a big banana leaf to your table, and then it's all vegetarian food and pretty much vegan food. But they just have like curry and rice, and they just put it on top of your banana leaf until you tell them to stop, and they'll keep piling stuff on until you're like, no, like I'm good. And then when you're done eating, you just fold up the banana leaf and put it away from you, and then they'll come and get it and toss it. And so they, that's what they use for their plates, which, I love it. So fun. So thank you for
amazing.
Yeah, it was really, really, it was like a really fun place to eat because it was so different. So thanks for jogging that memory.
Oh, you're welcome.
And so, yeah, I did a course on with a good friend of mine who's from Japan, and it was her grandmother's miso recipe. And so I did a course for our community learning how to make chickpea miso using the koji starter. And I think the thing with fermenting, I've always been really intimidated by it, and I think that there is a learning curve, and it does take practice, but I love it. And I would like to try tempeh. So I might have to look at your resources and see if I can take a stab at it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And like you said, like the fresh stuff is nothing like the stuff in the store. Like it's so much better. It's delicious.
True. And just like the miso, like this miso is like layers and layers and levels above what you can get in the store. It's also just kind of badass that you made it yourself,
Right?
I think
Totally.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So we covered the bean things. That's good. How about, do you use a dehydrator often? Is that a
Mhm.
kitchen appliance that you use all the time? And let's just talk about dehydration, what you use your dehydrator for, what the rules are about that, rules in air quotes. Let's get into that.
Yeah, so we do use a dehydrator. It's not necessary to have a dehydrator to eat raw foods. I mean, like we mentioned, like guacamole and stuff like that, salads. A lot of that stuff is really easy to make. Raw soups, raw curries, you don't need a dehydrator for raw sushi. But if you want to expand your creativity, the dehydrator is such an amazing tool. And we use our dehydrator multiple times a week. Mostly we make our wraps. So the wraps are one of our most popular recipes. They're a gluten-free wrap, low fat, made with fruits and vegetables mainly. There's a little bit of chia or flax and some psyllium husk that we add to them to give it like the flexibility and the binding and stuff. But it's mostly fruits and vegetables blended up. And we pour those onto these trays and we let them sit in the dehydrator for about 12 to 16 hours. It really depends on your area. Like if you're in a more humid, like where you are, where it's more humid, you might need to let them dry a little longer. If you're here in the desert, sometimes they only take 10 hours. But we dry those in the dehydrator and they're so amazing. Like we can fit so much in them because our wraps are 14 by 14 because we have an Excalibur dehydrator that has the most space. So we can make those wraps. We take them traveling, we take them camping, we take them hiking, we take them on the airplane. Everybody always loves when we make the wraps for them. You can put like a delicious sauce on each bite. Like they're just heavenly. So we also make things like burgers in the dehydrator as well. We'll form like little burger patties and we'll just let them dehydrate until they're burger consistency kind of, and we just eat those with lettuce buns, or sometimes we'll crumble them into a salad or whatever. We'll make taco meat in there. We make these little like pepperoni sticks, but we call them pepper nori sticks because they are rolled in nori. So it's basically just ground up veggies and nuts in with spices inside a little roll of nori, and then you dehydrate those for like 24 or 36 hours, and they've got like pepperoni sticks. Like they're so easy to travel with. They last a long time. We also do tostadas. We make our own crunchy raw vegan tostadas and taco shells. They are next level amazing, and they last for months if stored properly. We'll make like 72 to over 100 depending on how much corn we get fresh, and we'll just make like a huge amount. So we have like so many tostadas sitting in our cupboards ready to go if we ever want to make something like that. But we also use our dehydrator to condense sauces. We have a sushi book where we have 160 recipes and 40 of them are sauces, and some of the sauces are condensed. So we take like juice like bell pepper or mango or something, like we blend it with water and we use the juice to condense. And when it condenses, it becomes like a syrupy kind of a sauce, which is really nice because most sauces, are more on the hydrating side. So we can condense them and make them thicker with more flavor. So they work really well for sushi. And then we also use our dehydrator to marinate vegetables in as well. We have a recipe that we do often, which is we call it ramen, but it's like RAWMEN.
Cute, yes.
Yeah. So we marinate like bell peppers, mushrooms, broccoli, onions, and stuff like that in like a coconut amino, maybe garlic, ginger kind of a sauce. And we just let them dehydrate for about an hour. And then we'll spiralize some cucumber or zucchini and we'll put that in a bowl with those on top. And it is so good. It's like one of our favorite things to do. You could add water to it and make it into like a raw soup if you wanted to as well. So it's really versatile. If you want, we have some even really like super creative recipes, like the raw vegan gnocchi. So it's like raw gnocchi. We've got raw lasagna. We have Swedish style meatballs, like just some really unique stuff that you can do with the dehydrator.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll definitely link to your resources in the show notes of this episode too, if people are wanting to check that stuff out. Would you say, okay, so I hear a lot of people who are new to eating at least whole food plant-based, they come to it with this idea that like this takes a really long time. And I'm always like, it doesn't have to take a long time. Like this can actually be like very doable and very quick. You can also make it very complicated. Like you definitely can. There's a way to do it. And we even have recipes that makes it really complicated, though delicious, but it can be very, actually like a very quick way to eat.
Mhm.
And so do you hear that a lot about the raw way of eating, and do you feel similar? Let's talk about just like the time commitment that it takes.
I fully agree. It doesn't matter what diet you eat. There's going to be easy things and there's going to be challenging things. It's just how it is. It just depends on the level of complexity that you want in the meal. So, for example, Nate and I know people are like, they want meals that are like under 40 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm like, really? It takes you 40 minutes to make stuff? Because I don't know. I'm like, one time, I'll tell two quick stories. One time, we had Nate's sons over, and they were making mac and cheese on the stove. And I was able to chop those big salads for Nate and I and blend our dressing before their mac and cheese was done. So it was like, okay, it's not that long. A second story was Nate and I were both on calls, and we had decided, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to make lunch. And so I got off my call early, and it was roughly around 9 minutes by the time Nate got off his call, and I had his salad ready for him. And I was like, that was probably the fastest salad I ever made my whole life, because I was like, it was a game with myself. I'm like, I want to try and get it before he's done. And it was 9 minutes, like with a really easy dressing. So it's really easy. Fruit is so easy. Blending a smoothie is so easy. It takes like 5 minutes. Chopping a melon does not take long. Peeling a banana, super easy. Like there's a lot of really easy things to make.
Eating an apple.
Eating an apple.
Biting
I
into
know.
an apple. It's like it doesn't get any quicker than that.
Exactly. And we'll do often like snacks. We take like a celery stick and we put dates in it. And we'll do that like when we're hiking, for electrolytes and get the calories from the dates and stuff. But it's like so easy. We also really like making raw soups, because you just put everything in the blender and blend it on high for about 2 minutes. Because when you blend it, the friction of the Vitamix blades warm it up. So you don't even have to cook it. You've got a nice warm soup, and the temperature, the raw temperature is about 115 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
That's like, the threshold. But if it goes over a little less, we don't worry too much about that. But we can blend and have a nice raw soup in like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. And we've done we have a school community on school.
Oh yeah.
It's called Raw Food Romance. And in there, not every month, but every once in a while, we'll do something called all day meal prep, where we get up super early in the morning and do this class. But we show how we make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 people. And we try to do it in under an hour. And most of the time we're like right around the hour mark. So for 2 people, which would be cool for it, like if you're single and you're just making stuff for yourself, you could make your stuff for today and tomorrow in an hour, which is amazing. But then again, it really depends on what recipes you're making. If you're making really easy ones, like just salads and dressings, smoothies, and maybe like soups or something marinated, like it's so easy to do. So when people ask me, they're like, doesn't it take a lot of time? I'm like, actually it takes more time to eat it than it does to actually make it, which I don't mind, because we're watching a show on Netflix or whatever while we're eating, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
but
and it's a lot of chewing. It's and you're right. I mean, this way of eating is so much more nutrient dense than it is calorie dense. So you're eating so much more food. And so it does take some time to really eat it. Yeah. And I feel the same way. I'm like, if I can't put lunch together in 10 minutes, like it's not going to work for me, because even though I work from home and I have my own business, I don't want to think about making a whole meal from scratch all the time,
I hear you. I know.
So like I do batch cooking, and I have all my like components ready to go, and I just, and when my partner and I first got together, she was like, I've never seen somebody whip up a meal like you can whip up a meal. She's like, that was 5 minutes and lunch is ready. I'm like, I don't have time to fuck around. Like let's go. I need to do it. So we're busting that myth that whole food, plant-based and or raw, it doesn't have to take a long time. And like you said, and like I said, it can, but it doesn't have to.
And when you have a weekend or a day off and you want to play around in the kitchen, there's plenty of recipes that you can make that are a little bit more complex. And even our wraps, like people look at the wraps and they're so intimidated by them. But I always say to people, I'm like, if you can blend a smoothie, you can make the wraps. because that's really all it is. You chop everything, you make sure you weigh it, because I want to make sure people get the exact amount that you're getting, because you have to split it over the 2 dehydrator trays, or 3 if you're doing the smaller dehydrator. But it's usually, it makes 2 wraps, and 2 wraps makes 4 meals, because if you roll a wrap and you stuff it really good, it's lunch for 2 people. It's like, they're so filling and they're so good. But 1 batch makes 2 wraps, which makes 4 meals, and it only takes 15 minutes to make 1 batch. So like, if we're making multiple wraps for going on like vacation or road trips or whatever, sometimes we'll do 3 batches in one night, and that takes about 45 minutes. But 3 batches gets you 6 wraps, and 6 times 4 is like 20. It gets you 24 meals out of that. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of meals that you can get out of the wraps, and they're so easy to make. So it really depends on, what time you have, but it's totally doable. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. I do want to ask, just because I'm always interested in this, and when I go traveling or when I visit places, I love going to farmers markets. I love going to grocery stores. So where do you buy the bulk of your produce? Since you're eating so much of it.
Yeah. So we don't do like 100% organic. We call ourselves accidental organics. So if we see it, if we happen to shop at Sprouts or Whole Foods or whatever, we'll get organic. And some other places like Costco has a lot of organics as well. So we'll get organics, when it's there. We don't stress ourselves out about being 100% organic, because the whole point is to be, have that food freedom and not have to like stress out about all the little things. So we usually, here in Las Vegas, we shop at Winco, which is kind of like a more inexpensive place. Costco, Sprouts, and sometimes we'll randomly go to Trader Joe's for specific things. Like, they have shelled fresh English peas that we're obsessed with, because we'll freeze them when we get home, and then we thaw them for like our curries and stuff. So we buy a lot of those from them. But like every different store, we go to the Mexican place and we get some stuff there. They have some beautiful produce and a lot of more exotic fruits too. Like, they have jackfruit, and they have the really, really giant avocados that are lower in fat, which are really fun to do. And they have like cherimoya and stuff, mame as well. So, you have to look around too. Like, a lot of people are intimidated to go in certain grocery stores, and it's like, don't be. Go in there and support, the people who have that store, and go check it out, because you never know what you're going to find.
Yes. I'm a big fan of going into any kind of international grocery store, and just the stuff you can find. And usually for like a really good price as well, like just the spices. So that's great. And, I love that you shop at places where that's like accessible for people to do it. It's not going to require going to one specific place to buy this one specific thing. So thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Yeah. So this conversation has made me very hungry. I cannot, I'm going to go make a really big salad for lunch. I've been thinking about it. What do you want to share? Like, for people who are interested in, I mean, you've shared so much already, but for people who are interested in maybe like you said, eating more raw stuff, like maybe not going totally raw, but just incorporating some more raw meals or recipes into their life, where would you have them start?
I would say usually start with where you're at, for one. I don't tell people to go all raw right away, because everyone's microbiome is starting from a different place. Like, if you are currently, maybe you eat a lot of junk food vegan, and you're eating a very low fiber diet, and your gut is challenged, you're going to need to go slow when you increase your raw food, because you're giving your body raw plant fiber. Like, this is like superfood for your gut. But if you're not used to it, it can cause a lot of unnecessary gas and bloating. And now, gas isn't like evil. A little bit of gas is a sign that your microbiome is producing the short chain fatty acids. So it's actually, it's a sign that your gut is active. The problem happens when it's like a lot, and it's really painful, and you're getting like stabbing pains, you can't walk and that kind of thing. That's when it's like, okay, I've had a little bit too much fiber. It doesn't mean that fiber is bad, because I know a lot of people will do like, they'll eat broccoli or whatever, and they'll be like, broccoli isn't human food because I can't digest it. It's like, well, you probably have a weaker gut and you just need to work up slower. So I always recommend people go slow, like Dr. Will Bolsowicz in his Fiber Fueled book. It's like slow is the most important thing. Eat one floret of broccoli, but be more consistent with it every day, right? So I recommend people just go really slow when they're increasing their raw, but also lower their fat intake, because you're going to be eating a lot more fruit and a lot more vegetables. And if you're eating really high fat, your insulin's going to be a little more sluggish when dealing with all those sugars. So I usually say, like, obviously, you know, you and I are both on the same page. It's like, limit your animals, get them off the plate. Like, ultra processed foods, get those out of the way. So that's what I would say first, is get rid of that stuff, and then lower your fat while you're increasing your raw fruits and vegetables. And then a lot of people find that breakfast tends to be the easiest meal of the day because they have the most energy and they're fresh and they're motivated because they're like, okay, I'm going to be healthy today, you know, so they get really excited about it. So breakfast is usually one of the easiest meals. But I also recommend people to maybe, like, when you're in the morning, maybe if you could get up an extra like 15 minutes or 20 minutes earlier and chop some of your vegetables for your evening salad, because dinner is usually the hardest meal of the day for people to choose healthy, regardless if it's cooked or raw. It doesn't matter. People find dinner to be the hardest, usually because people aren't eating enough. And that's the number one issue that I see with people over the last 11 plus years that I've been doing this. The number one struggle that people have with adding more raw is that they are not eating enough. You have to eat more volume to get enough calories and to get a broader range of nutrition. Otherwise, you're going to have cravings. If you're having cravings, it's usually a sign that you haven't eaten enough or that you need to eat, right? So many people, I mean, in modern day life, it's so easy to skip a meal because we're like busy with all kinds of stuff. So you miss lunch or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're ravenous, or you only ate like maybe 500 calories, and all of a sudden it's 6 o'clock at night and you're starving, you're exhausted, you're tired. And it's, you know, that's when we don't make really good decisions. So you need to choose something that doesn't align anymore. So I really recommend people to eat enough during the day, because that's going to really alleviate a lot of those unnecessary cravings and, you know, ideas of what you might want to eat instead. So there's that. And also just explore. You don't have to go raw overnight. You just add more raw and work with your gut, not against it, and plan your meals. That's a really big one as well. Plan out what you plan to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whether that's weekly or daily or whatever. What I used to do when I first went raw was I would take a piece of paper at night and I would write down what I planned to have for breakfast, lunch, snacks, and dinner. And I would write down the recipe name and everything. And then I would schedule myself in. I'd be like, when am I going to do this? Because like, it's one thing to have a plan, but it's another thing to actually have the time, you know, carved out to actually do it. So I would write down, like, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to make my lunch early. I'm going to chop my salad early or whatever. I'm going to do some of it tonight before I go to bed or whatever it is. Like, everyone's life is a little different. So you schedule yourself in, and then you show up for yourself just like you would show up for a job interview or a dentist appointment or whatever, right? Your friends going out for lunch. Like, we show up for other people, but we rarely show up for ourselves. So we got to treat ourselves like a really important meeting and actually get in the kitchen and actually do the food prep so that we are prepared. And that way, when you come home from work, you're like, oh, I'm so glad that I got my salad chopped. Now I just have to blend a dressing and I'm ready to go, or whatever it is. So it's so much better when you do that. And then finally, I'd like to say, think of your future self. I really love the idea of connecting with our future selves and asking them what they would like us to be doing today, because we're really good at looking back and being like, oh, I wish I would have worked out every day for the last year. You know, we're so good at looking back and wishing. So we can time travel by going to our future self, like even a year from today, or even a week from today, or even after dinner. Like, you can ask your after dinner self and be like, what would you wish that I would have eaten? Because, you know, they're not going to say, I wish you ate that pizza because you feel like crap right now. They're going to be like, I really wish you would have actually just gone in the kitchen and made the salad. And then when you connect with them and you're like, okay, that's what you would really like me to do, then you go and do the thing, even though you don't want to. You just get up and you go do it. And then after you're eating salad and you're like, I feel so good. I'm so proud of myself. I'm empowered. I feel awesome. You know, and then that is enough encouragement sometimes to choose the healthier thing. I mean, obviously it's not a guarantee, but it helps a lot. So Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest.
All very practical tips and very great places to start. And I think a lot of that can be applied no matter what way, if you're eating plant-based cooked or plant-based raw, a lot of that can apply as well. And I think
Mhm.
what was coming up for me as you were talking is like the thing that I always come back to is we have to eat anyways. It's
Yes.
not like it's a choice of like, okay, do this or not eat. Like we have to
Yeah.
eat. This is a
Mhm.
requirement for all humans. So if we have to do it anyways, doesn't
Mhm.
it make sense to like do it in a way that's really going to support us and also be very delicious and help
Mhm.
us kind of thrive in our life. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. It's like when they say like the time's going to pass anyways.
Hmm.
So if you're not going to do it, then, it's the time's going anyways. Another thing too is like, people get worried about having to go all raw, but it's really about adding more raw. So having more fruit as snacks, having a bigger salad,
Yeah.
trying out different recipes and
Adding
just
more
like,
veggies to your
yeah,
to your soups or your salads or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
I think
Mhm.
I'm all about that because we were talking a little bit before. Like I'm all about helping people eat more plants. Just put more plants
Mhm.
into your diet. Just eat more raw stuff because none of that sucks. Like regardless
Yeah.
of how you're eating, none of that sucks. Like that's only a good thing.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, you don't like raw food? Well, you're missing out because it's so good. I mean, like we do enjoy it, and yeah, people don't need to be scared. Or I mentioned earlier, before we went live, was that a lot of people will say like, oh, well, I'm not a raw vegan, so I'm not, that recipe isn't for me. But
Hmm.
it's like, it's amazing. Like, yeah, you don't have to be a raw vegan to eat raw food. Like, it's fresh, it's delicious, it's amazing. It's like, just eat more.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, you definitely don't have to be vegan or plant-based to make a delicious vegan or plant-based recipe. And in fact, so many of the people in our community is like, I brought this recipe to, my
Mm.
Omni style dinner, and that was the first thing that was finished, right? Or like I brought this to a potluck and everybody wanted the recipe and none of them were vegan. And so I think that you're right, those labels can kind of freak people
Mhm.
out, but it's like just like eat the good food. It doesn't matter. Just eat the
It's
yummy
just
food.
food.
And I
It's
think
just
that
food.
for people who enjoy cooking and enjoy trying new things, I think that raw really offers something unique because it is a different way of approaching this for some things, right? For some
Yeah.
things it's going to be the same. A salad is a salad, but
Yeah.
like using the dehydrator and making your own tempeh and for fermenting things, it's like it's nice to try something different sometimes. So
Mhm.
I think that this way is really intriguing for people who maybe are even like in a food rut and they're sick of what they're doing.
Mm.
Like you could kind of like try this and see what that sparks for you.
Mhm.
I had another question and then I forgot
Yeah.
it and then I just thought about it. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between fermentation and pickling?
Ooh, yes, great question. So, with fermenting, you are using salt is the main thing. Like there are some that are salt free, but I think that the ones with the salt are more ideal because they create a specific environment that's friendly to the bacterial growth. Plus, it preserves. Plus, it adds a little flavor in there too. So the salt ferment, what it does is it creates that environment friendly for the bacteria to flourish and grow and actually ferment the foods. And when they ferment the foods, they're kind of like pre-digesting it because the fermentation happens in your gut as well. But when it's in the jar, it's like pre-digesting it for you. Plus, they're multiplying. So it's a great way to get more probiotics into your body as well. Pickling, on the other hand, uses white vinegar and for the most part. And when you're using white distilled vinegar, that is, I mean, think about our grandmothers would clean their kitchen with distilled vinegar because it kills bacteria. So when you're pickling something, you're actually destroying the bacteria and you're making it shelf stable for years. And yes, ferments can last for quite a while in the fridge. But when you're having a pickled product, you're using that vinegar, which is not beneficial for your microbiome because we want to keep our microbiome healthy and safe. But when we're ingesting all this distilled white vinegar, we know what that's doing to some of our bacteria in there, but it's also doing it in the food. So you're having like almost like a sterile food with
Mm-hmm.
it. Now, obviously I've eaten both in my life. And I personally prefer the fermented flavors. The vinegar ones are a little bit more intense, and some people are used to that. So when they do a ferment, they're like, it's not the same, right? There's still acid that's formed in the fermentation process. So it does have that zing, but it's like kind of fizzy, and, it's different for people who aren't used to that kind of thing. But I would see, when I was younger, when I first was learning about fermentation, you would go to the grocery store and they would have sauerkraut in the fridge that was made with salt. And then you would have sauerkraut on the shelf that had vinegar in it. I was like, which one is going to be more alive? So that's why we call ourselves raw and living food vegans, because we eat the living food and the pickles are in fact dead. So, and they kill your own bacteria too. Like, not like, I don't want to fearmonger or scare anybody, but it's, it contributes to, the death of some of your microbiome. So yeah, that would be the difference. Prefer the salt version.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I think that that's one of those things that not everybody always knows the difference between those two things, because they are similar in ways, but they're actually much different. So thank you for clarifying that. Okay. So what did I miss? What do you want to share that I did not cover?
What I would want to share, let's see, take it one day at a time, one line at a time. A lot of people feel overwhelmed, especially like even just coming to a vegan diet. They're overwhelmed because it's like new information. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's usually a sign that you're stepping out of your comfort zone, which is a good thing, right? So if you feel a little overwhelmed, just take a step back. It's like learning a new language. When you start learning a new language, you start with one word. And you practice that word over and over again. And then after you get good at that word, you add another word in, and then you eventually can make a sentence. And so it's time, and we give ourselves so much grace when it comes to learning a new language or learning a new instrument or learning a new job. Like, we give ourselves that grace knowing that we can't know everything all at once. But for some reason, when it comes to diet, we expect ourselves to be able to just jump in and, be perfect overnight. But it's just not the way it is. So we have to give ourselves that grace. And if we're feeling overwhelmed, to just take it one line at a time, one recipe at a time, like get really good at one recipe. Still eat the same thing that you're eating, but get really good at that one recipe. And then once you're really good at that one, add a new one in, try something different, maybe make different sauces or what have you. And then eventually you will start to replace your old menu items with new ones that you like better. And I call that your fallback 5. So I always recommend people just work with where you're at and try different recipes and find your fallback 5. These are 5 recipes that you know and love, that you always have ingredients on hand for, and that are quick and easy for you to make. These are going to be awesome choices. Like for me, the French dressing that I mentioned earlier, that French dressing with the dates, that's one of our fallback 5s. If we're like tired or stressed or whatever, we're just like, let's just make French dressing because we know we're going to love it. We always have the ingredients on hand and it's super easy to make. So finding those fallback 5. So when you are stressed, tired, bored, lonely, whatever it is, and you don't want to make food, you can be like, okay, I'm just going to make one of my fallback 5 because it's going to be easy and I'm going to be able to eat that. And then it keeps you on track so that you don't have to, kick yourself or whatever, because we're really good at that. And if being hard on ourselves worked, it would have worked already, right? So be graceful with yourself and take it one day at a time. And remember that taking time for yourself is not selfish. It's actually selfless, because when you give more to yourself, you can give more to others, which is, one of the whole points of being a human and living in a community, right? We want to give more to others, but if we're struggling and our cup is like a quarter full, like we're not able to give to others what we would really want to. So when we take time for ourselves and we nourish ourselves properly, not only can we serve others better, but we can inspire them to change as well. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I think that is a great place to end it. I think that was very inspiring and very well said. And thank you for sharing your yummy recipe ideas, but also your wisdom with us. This has been a really awesome talk. And before we go, where can people, I'll put the links in the show notes, but if people want to find you right now, where should they go?
best place is either Instagram or YouTube. On Instagram, I am at Raw Food Romance. And on YouTube, it's Lissa's Raw Food Romance. And we're doing daily videos on YouTube for 2026. So there's a lot of content, a lot of stuff like how we've been talking today, a lot of mindset stuff, why I don't do certain things and all this kind of stuff. So there's YouTube. There's also Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Lissa's Raw Food Romance. And if they want to find our school community, that's at school, which is skool.com. They could just search Raw Food Romance to find our community there. And we have all our ebooks, and everything is always 40% off. So if anyone wanted to get any of our recipes, they can use code RAWFOOD40 at checkout and get 40% off anything they want from the ebook store, which is at payhip.com/rawfoodromance.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for this chat. I really enjoyed getting to know you and talking with you. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yay.
Yay.
Bye, Lissa.
Bye.
Did you know that Clean Food Dirty Girl has a club? We do. It's called the Clean Food Dirty Girl Meal Plan Club. And if you want to eat more plant-based meals that are delicious, that are damn good, that will have you craving them, if you want to feel energized and healthy from head to toe, if you want to save time in the kitchen each week, if you want to use all of the groceries that you actually buy, and if you want the omnivores in your life to say, yum, to the plant-based meals that you're cooking, you have got to join us. Go to cleanfooddirtygirl.com, and on the homepage, you can find out more. I would love to see you in the club. It is the best. Come find out what all the buzz is about. It is life-changing, and I would love to have you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for being in our sphere. If you can rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to them, that would be badass. Thank you so much for spreading the dirty love.